started our segments called Open the Gates, where our hearts are to get real people with real testimonies. And I began the segment with a testimony of how we got humanitarian parole. And I really believe the Lord's leading me to share once a week testimonies from our family. So here goes today, and I'm going to share quickly 3 accounts with 4 points out of each, and I trust that one or two or many of you will be able to resonate and witness and be encouraged by how the Lord leads when you are trusting for a specific need. For me, it was education. 3 different accounts of trusting for education for my girls, but for you it could be a partner, finances, a job, a direction, whatever the case. It's the Lord's character and how he deals with us and he leads us and how he shows himself off for us. So I'm going to start off with the first account where my eldest daughter was due to go to high school, and I had applied for the school in the area. Thought of course she's going to get in, it's a local school, and got a letter to say that the application was unsuccessful due to demand and supply, and I had nowhere else to send her that I felt right. There were other schools in the surrounding areas, but I had no peace about them, and I remember saying to the Lord, what now? And I felt just to wait. Hard place, because I had people like my dad and friends saying, where's Kirsty going? And used to make me feel a bit odd and guilty because I really didn't have an answer. But at that point I knew I didn't have peace about the other places, and so I just used to smile and say, I'm working on it. The last day of school came, and I remember her coming in the driveway and saying, Ma, here's my report, where am I going? And at that time I must say I felt very guilty. I felt I was really hadn't taken care of her needs, and a bad mother, and I just looked and I said, Kirsty, I'm not sure. But it was about 10 minutes later when the phone rang, my cell phone, and I had applied for a part-time job 3 months prior to that at a private school, not needing to leave to transition from one school to another, but I just thought it would be nice to work at a Christian school. And it was Craig, the principal of the school, and he said, I'm sorry, I haven't only got back to you now, it's been hectic, whatever, but could you come for an interview now at my house? I remember driving down the driveway, still a bit confused at the whole conversation, that it happened so quickly, and 10 minutes later he looked at me with 3 people on his board and he said, I want you to come on board to the school. And I was so excited, and then he said, do you have any children of high school age? And I said, well, I have a daughter. And he said, well, there's an opportunity, there's an opening for her, she's welcome to join. And then he added the next bit, and he said, at 10% of the school fees. And I still remember this shock, because I'd always wanted her to go to a private Christian school, and at that time we could not afford it. And I remember getting in the car and driving the whole way home and just weeping before the Lord, tears of joy, and running up and telling my daughter that she had got into school and it was the best school. And the 4 points that I'd like to pull out here during this time was, number 1, if your plan doesn't work, my plan was she's going to get into the local school, and I was really disappointed that she didn't get in. At that point you have a choice, to panic or to get your peace or to hear God. And for me, the Lord was saying, I'm working on something else, so get your peace. And I did. I got peace about it. I prayed about it. What do you mean get your peace? It says in Isaiah 6:23, when we look to him we have perfect peace. But I had no peace about any other school, so I had to wait. That was my directive then. Number 2, be careful who you speak to during those times of waiting or trusting in the Lord, because the people are well-meaning, but they don't really understand. I remember my dad saying, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And it really did try and rattle me a bit, but I had to hang on to the thought and the plan that God was making a way for my daughter. And also, keep peace as a weapon. Either get peace, or if you have no peace, then you don't go with it. Seek peace. And for me it was, I had no peace about other schools, but I had peace about waiting on the Lord. And so I hung on to that peace as a weapon. And fourthly, get a word or 2 words, a rhema word. And for me, I had a scripture for my daughter, and I would say, Lord, she's your child, according to Psalm 34:10, no good thing will she lack. Psalm 32 verse 8, you will instruct and you will lead her. And I got revelation out of those words. Those words became not just logos, but rhema words, and I used to speak them back to the Lord, remind him of his promises for his child, And the Lord came through in a mighty way. My daughter was very happy at that school. The second account happened in the USA. Before we left, I had got a prophetic word to say that my children would be well educated. And I remember Kim saying that we would actually be living 1.7 miles from his house. That was interesting. When we arrived in Dallas, we were in a nice school district, but across the line, or across the 121 highway, there was another district, a school district, and I knew, not from proud reasons, I wasn't unhappy, that my daughters were to go there because both of them were interested in music, and I knew that was the place. But it was really a different economic class, and so a neighborhood. And I remember driving at night time up and down the streets, looking and thinking and wondering and praying. And I remember the enemy saying to me in my head, "What are you doing here? You don't belong on this side of the freeway. You know, you have hardly any money coming in. How are you going to afford it? You don't fit in." And I think we wrestled that, you know. I got discouraged by that. But yet I would go back and continually look, because that's how I felt led. Until one day I saw a sign on 121 Glade Road, and it said for rent. And when I approached the owner, they weren't on the same page as me, because they wanted much more rent. But I felt just to be open with him and to negotiate in terms of that. I said we'll look after their livestock, and this is how we could pay the rent off. And the door opened, and we had very many happy years and memories. My daughter excelled at that school, and so the Lord made a way there as well. And 4 things here that I really learned was, number 1, faith without works. I had faith to be in that school district, and yet I had to then activate it by driving up and down the streets. I don't know if I was looking for a house or direction, or I was looking for an answer, but I activated my faith. Secondly, come against discouragement. When the enemy comes and he whispers that voice, you've got to take authority over that, and because you can become very down, and guard against discouragement, not only from people, but from the enemy. Number 3, don't become intimidated when the door opens halfway and you feel that it is the right door, but it didn't work out. Because with me, I had to negotiate with that lady. I didn't have to. I felt to negotiate with that lady. At that point where the door opens, it opens halfway, the Lord could be shutting it too, so it could be either way. I would have been happy if it was not of God, then the door would have been shut. I would have sort of been irritated. I would have looked at the house and said, "Oh no, it's in the wrong, you know, it's dirty and whatever." But don't be intimidated when the Lord is opening the door, but the enemy wants you not to walk through it. And fourthly, be specific how you pray. I asked the Lord for 4 bedrooms, a big garden with trees, in the nice school district, and I got every one of them. And you think, "Oh, that's presumptuous." No, if you ask the Lord, he'll give you the desires of his heart. He can put those desires, he will put those desires in your heart. And we had many happy years at 1721 Glade Road. The third instance came in South Africa when we were here 6 months, and remember, we weren't allowed back, so we never knew when we were going to go back. And I had to put the girls in school, and I was thinking of homeschooling them. And one day my daughter sent me to a clock shop, but I landed up in a strip mall at a shoe shop, and the shoe salesman heard Bianca's accent, and he said to her, "Are you American?" So she said yes. So he said, "You should be at the American school," which I'd never heard of, and we laughed. On the way home, we decided to drive past the American school, and as I drove past, my heart began to beat faster and faster and faster. This excitement began to bubble. And when I got home, I Googled it, and I decided I would allow Bianca to just visit, just test the water. But I couldn't put both children in. It was just too expensive. So the next day, I remember going to the car to take Bianca for an interview, and here comes Kayla. And I said, "Kayla, no, we're going to look somewhere else for you." And David said, "Ronson, she must come and apply too." And Kayla got the highest entrance exam marks ever for English. And I walked out the school and thinking, it's probably one of the most expensive schools in Cape Town, but Lord, I'm really believing that you're wanting them here, but I can't do it. And when I went home, we have a forest near our house, and I went and I prayed around that forest. And that was a time of, I would say, more intense intercession, spiritual warfare, if you will. I began to really speak to the Lord about my children's futures, prophesy over them. No good thing would you withhold again. Nothing's impossible with you. And I began to speak to the Lord until I got my peace back. And when I got home, it was about an hour later, and the phone rang, and David said, "Gosh, it's Kim phoning." And Kim used to phone if once a year for Christmas. He always wrote an email, but he never phoned. And that day, he spoke to David, that time, and he said to David, he insisted that both girls be put in American school. And in the anticipation, the hopes that we would return soon. And to this day, I have the younger one still there. Now I trust, my brother-in-law has passed away. I trust for the provision for her there, but God is faithful and it comes through monthly. But the next day, $5,000 was in the account of the American school, and God had made a way, incredible way. And the four things I'd like to bring out here is that where the Lord leads us, he says the steps of the righteous are led by the Lord. And you might think the leading could be a big, huge thing. For me, it was going into that shop that day. The Lord led us and to speak to that man who then said about the American school. Number two, when I drove past it, I got that anticipation, and sometimes I got that bubbling, that excitement. It was almost like the Lord was initiating, was activating already an anticipation that was coming, that was going to be linked to his favor. And I could feel that bubble, and I knew that was a witness already, an excitement in my spirit that this is way bigger, God, than I can do, but that you're in it. Number three, I prayed that day intensely. Everything must be birthed in prayer, and it's not a works thing, it's a prayer of faith. But I went and I spent quite a long time in that forest, and I prayed the word back to the Lord and reminded him of his promises, and got back to that point of you're in charge, got my peace back, and I could rest. And fourthly, God's perfect timing. His perfect timing. My brother-in-law phoned that day. The next day, my daughter were basically enrolled in the school. And so I'd like to encourage any one out of you there today that whatever you're going through and you're trusting through, it's a process, you know, that one or two of these points would have sparked you on to just hang on, get your peace back, speak the word back to the Lord, trust him. He's might be working plan A. You think it's plan B you're settling with, but God has a plan A, and that he desires to give us good things, to answer our prayers, and he desires to give us his best. For me, it's not, Lord, your permissive will or your second best, but your best, because you get the glory and I'm your child. Amen. Thank you for watching.